Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ben, and in this episode of the Smoking Hot Confessions Barbecue Podcast, we're chatting with a guy whose job is the envy of us all. Hey family, hope you're well wherever you are and you got that thin blue smoke rolling. This is episode 124 of the Smoking Hot Confessions Barbecue Podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking to Kevin Kolman, who is the head grill master at Weber, which is the job that I'm sure all of us wish we could have. And we're going to find out all about that. But before we get into that, I just got a couple of announcements that I need to run by you. The first is that we do still have our free ebook available for you over on SmokingHotConfessions.com. It's the Beginner's Guide to Real Barbecue. So if you're at the start of your barbecue journey, if you're just getting into real barbecue, into low and slow, make sure you head on over to SmokingHotConfessions.com, have a bit of a click around, a bit of a look around, and a pop-up will it'll pop up, and it'll ask you for your details. Pop them in, and we'll send them straight to your inbox. We'll send that mini ebook through to you. Okay, the second one is that we are still scouting for businesses to partner with for our podcast. If you have a message that you'd like to get out into the eyes and ears of some raving mad barbecue fans, shoot me an email, ben@SmokingHotConfessions.com, and let's get that conversation started. The next one is, of course, yes, this episode's sponsor is Meat and Fire Media Services. So they're a business that offers photography, videography, brand awareness, training, all that sort of stuff to different businesses, particularly with a focus on barbecue-style businesses. So if you're listening to this, you've got a barbecue business and you're looking to build your brand through social media, they do have a course running at the moment. It's called Brand Building Through Strategic Social Media Marketing. Head on over to meatandfiremediaservices.com. Use the code word podcast at checkout. You'll save $100 off their flagship course there. So that's very good of them to do that for us. And the last one, if you're watching this video on Facebook, give us a like and a share. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, a subscribe, and hit that little notification bell. If you're on Instagram TV, give us a little heart and a follow. And if you're listening on a podcasting app, do give us a 5-star rating and review because they are incredibly very helpful for us. So this app, as I said, Kevin is a man whose job is the envy of everyone here, including myself. He's based in Chicago, Illinois, and he is the head grill master for Weber. So without further ado, let's get Kevin in here.
This is the internationally awarded Smoking Hot Confessions Barbecue Podcast with your host, Ben Arnott. How long's it been since your last confession?
Alrighty, Kevin, welcome to the confessional, my friend. Thank you for joining me.
Ben, thank you so much for having us. This is so exciting to be talking to some people down under, which I've spent a fair amount of time in communication with a lot of you guys. So it's great to be actually talking to you today.
Yeah, I understand that you do have quite a bit of a long history talking barbecue with us Aussies down here. So it is great to bring you into the show.
It's fantastic. One of the first times I got to interact with some of the guys from down under was the Suck Knuckle Smokers, and they came up here and did a whole barbecue lesson with them. And I'm still friends, still talk to Craig, still follow those guys and all the success that they've had, which has been fantastic. And, you're in barbecue. Let me start that over. You know barbecue and are into barbecue if you've got the right attire, right? I mean, anybody in barbecue's got to have the Maca stuff, right? I mean, if you all got it, you're not in barbecue. So I want to make sure we rep that because this is some of the coolest and best stuff that I've gotten. And I knew I made it in barbecue when I got this stuff made for me. So we've extremely got great ties to Australia and the great barbecue culture that you guys have there. And we're so excited to be talking to you.
I was actually going to ask about that because that was the first thing that I noticed. The second thing was what a beautiful lawn you've got. That grass behind you is just incredible. We don't have a lot of water here in Australia, so to see beautiful green grass like that is just inspiring. But no, it was the Maca Gear. I was like, woohoo, there you go.
It's funny because he had texted me or he had information me over Instagram. He's like, hey, Kevin. I was like, I got to get some. Like, I was like, I can't. So I was talking to one of the guys at Weber and I was like, hey, you think I can get my team the knife rolls? It'd be a nice gift. We've been working our tails off, traveling all over the place. Like, absolutely. And so it was one of the coolest moments to be able to present them all with the Maca rolls with their names on them and the kettles on them. And he's like, there's so many people asking me, can I get the kettle on mine and everything else? And so, I mean, he is such a class act. I mean, the quality of his stuff, and I brought the apron in and everybody's like, we got to get these aprons. These are absolutely crazy. So, it's so great that barbecue reaches around the world, but it's so important that we take care of those small businesses that just provide some of that great quality things that, I mean, you talk to anybody, Mo's got them, Tuffy's got them, Wayne Mueller from Louis Miller's got them, which I do a lot. I mean, everybody in barbecue that is somebody has these things. So it's pretty cool. Harry Sue, yes, Ben, you got one too. So it's so cool how much that is translated over to here and how it's really become a staple in our barbecue community. It's really awesome.
It has, yeah, and it's kind of indicative of the resurgence of artisanal craftsmanship that's sort of come back into things as well after decades of just mass production. It's really wonderful, and I've met Maca a couple of times, and he's just a top guy. So it's really it makes me really happy to jump on a podcast interview here with you and see that you've got the Maca Gear there. So good.
Gotta have it. And the cool thing is, like, he made a couple for my daughters, which theirs are even better than mine because he actually took the thermometer holder and put the kettle in theirs. So they've actually got upgraded ones. They got more custom stuff than Dad does this time, which is really cool. So, it's amazing. Like you said, the artisanal work that he does, the craftsmanship that goes into that, the quality of it. I mean, I would say, like when you unbox a Weber, when you're getting your first Weber, there is like this excitement and like, I still have it right now, goosebumps going up. You got a Weber. Like when you open up a box from him and that smell of leather and quality comes out, there's nothing like it in anything I've ever, my cowboy boots that I've gotten that are custom. There's nothing like the smell of something coming out of Maca over here that just, you're just like, oh my God. Everybody that walks by is like, can you smell the quality? I mean, this apron's probably 9 months to a year old and I can still smell the high quality leather. I mean, it's just spectacular. Yeah,
he does some great stuff. Yeah. Alrighty. So what was the last thing that you barbecued, my friend?
Actually, the last thing I barbecued, I actually did a charity dinner this past weekend, which, it's really fun that over the last 5 years, I've been fortunate enough to partner with charities. And so they auction off a 3-hour experience with me. And over the last 6 years, 6 years, we've been able to donate over $60,000 to charities. And so part of that dinner was doing a Wagyu brisket from Snake River Farms, was doing a pastrami brisket, which we have a special way of doing that. And then we did a Wrangler roast that is patented out of New York, Lobel's, who's the top butcher in the U.S., third in the world. You will never have a cut like this ever. And so we did a whole meat science experience seasoning. I did this whole dinner. And for that dinner, we raised over $10,000 for military families in need here. So it was really fantastic. So that was the last thing that I cooked on a grill, which was all night Friday on my smoke fire into Saturday, and then grilled on my Q, which is huge for you guys. So I did Wagyu steaks, prime from Lobel's, and then choice. And we did a whole meat science experience on how to, the difference in taste and everything else. But I put 16 8-ounce fillets on a Q1200, which you don't think that thing's big, but that thing packs power. And I know the Q's a big grill down there. So yes, I use them here too. Although I have a lot of firepower in my backyard, that is one of my favorite grills to cook.
Yeah, I can see that you've certainly got a couple there. That charity work is awesome. I'm going to loop back to that a bit later on. What I want to get into right now is what can you tell me about that Wrangler cut?
So the Wrangler cut, so Lobel's patented this cut, and it comes out of the forequarter. It's surrounded by some undesirable muscles, and they figured out how to fabricate this thing out, and it almost looks like a catcher's mitt when you get it. It's like meaty on one side, it thins itself out, but it is absolutely, it's almost like a brisket. It doesn't cook like a brisket because it cooks a little hot and fast, but it is so unbelievably tender. And they have this special barbecue sauce that they put on it that it's their recipe, and there is nothing, and I mean nothing. And I've taught barbecue in over 16 different countries. I've been around the world. There is nothing as good as a Lobel's Wrangler roast. I mean, it is so unique, so flavorful. I mean, Mark and David, they're 5th generation butchers. They are some of the best people that I've ever come across when it comes to meat quality, consistency. It's one of those things that when I cook for our board, when I cook for the executives at Weber, there's only one phone call that I make for meat, and that's to the guys in New York and say, hey, I need your help. And they always come and deliver, always.
That's awesome. Yeah, so they just like dry ice it over to you.
They dry ice it over, and they're one of the only companies in the U.S. that ships perishable. So they will ship, and it lands in your front door by 10 a.m. It's absolutely awesome.
Oh, wow.
And then when you know the boxes are stacked up, you're like, this is going to be a good meal we're going to have here. No doubt about it.
It sounds almost a little bit like a tri-tip then, if it's sort of thick at one end and thinner at the other, and you direct grill it.
It's probably about the size of circumference of like this, right?
Oh,
so it's almost a complete full circle, and it almost looks like a brisket because it's thick on the one end, almost where the point would be, and it kind of flattens itself out, but it looks like a catcher's mitt. It has the creases in it, which is really unique, but It is just unbelievable. Fall apart, and this is like a 45 minute to an hour cook. This is not take it to 195, 204, 206 if you're cooking brisket, depending on your temperature. This is a 115, 20-ish doneness. Let it sit for 5-10 minutes, slice that sucker, and it is unreal. I mean, absolutely unreal.
So good, so good. I can see that you got a whole bunch of different grills on your deck there. Which one's your favorite?
Oh my gosh, that's like asking which daughter I love the most, man. Like I love them both. Maddie, she like follows in my footsteps. She's cooked with some of the best in the world. Wayne, Aaron, Russell Regals. I mean, Kinsey, my 6-year-old. I mean, she's got the passion and fire that I have. So I wouldn't say I have a favorite one. I mean, the greatest gift that we have, and this just talks about Weber as a brand. The greatest gift we have is cooking food for our family and our friends. And for me, people ask, what's your favorite thing to cook? It's never about me. It's always about the people that are eating, because I want them to have the best experience they possibly can. I want them to leave like, man, that was the best brisket. Can you believe this? Like when you come and eat a barbecue that I have, it's been known I have an endless meat cooler. Like you will not leave without having food for the next 2 weeks to eat, because we just cook and we cook. But that's, the important is I love any grill that we make that makes memories, right? The kettle is so important because it's been around for almost 70 years. You've got our Summit charcoal, which these things hold temperature. I mean, these grills, I have a picture that I have a Summit charcoal with about 1.5 inches to 2 inches of snow on it, and the temperature reads 225. That's how well insulated these are. Like the WSMs, those are part of my favorites, because when you can cook, just like on the Summit charcoals, when you can cook for 16, 18, 20 hours, people have such an anticipation for that barbecue that it really gets them jazzed, right? Plus it allows us to be outside a little bit more and have a little bit of the fun juice and all that good stuff that goes along with barbecue. And so it's one of those things that it's really hard for me. It's almost impossible to say which one I love the most, because it's not the grill, it's the memories that we make on them, right? And to some people, they might say, oh no, it's got to be WSM. You can't be cooking on a pellet. And I'm like, you know what? I've cooked great food on pellets. People didn't know the difference. They were like, man, this is one of the best briskets you ever cooked. It was on the smoke fire. Oh my God, you got to be kidding me, right? There was a time, probably about 5 years ago, I cooked for our board, and I did a brisket on a gas grill on the Summit, and I did a brisket on a WSM, and 22 out of the 23 people preferred the one off of the gas grill than the charcoal grill.
Wow.
Just the way it worked out, just the way, same brisket, same trim, same rub, same everything. So it's one of those things that, I think sometimes people in their minds, they think if they don't see it, they taste it like, oh, taste, tenderness, and everything else. So, but to me, it's, we're fortunate because Weber is the preeminent leader, the global leader in barbecue, and to be able to cook on these grills and the legendary things that have been built into this company, and the memories that have been made in the backyards for people, it is such a gift, right? And that's something that we all need to cherish, and we all need to, you can always take a step back and be like, you know what, the world is the world, but when you get in the backyard, this is the most inclusive and important part of our lives to our family and our friends. And fortunately enough for Weber, we've been around for almost 70 years. And, we've been part of some of the most important memories people make. And so that's why it's hard for me to answer which is my favorite grill, because I love them all, because they create those memories for us.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that you link that to memories. I a couple of years ago, more than a couple of years ago now, I went back through all the old family albums and I scanned them all into a software which turned them into a calendar. And one of the photos I found was of a family holiday when I was a baby, like maybe 1 year old, maybe 2 years old. And it's my grandparents, my father and my mother all out. They'd been on a caravanning holiday, and I'm sort of sitting there on my dad's knee, and actually, sorry, on my mother's knee, because my dad was standing there cooking on a Weber kettle. And, well, was he cooking or was he burning? It's tough to say. There was about 4 inches of flame coming up over the top of whatever he was cooking.
I think you and your dad came from the same school of cooking.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's just interesting that you frame it like that, because it is true. That is the connections that we do make to our grills. I'm just going to go off on a little bit of a side tangent here. Just while you were speaking before, a squirrel ran down the tree and ran across the grass behind you there. And it just made me think of this, the new Netflix barbecue game show that I'm watching at the moment. And I just saw the episode where they did a bunch of squirrels. So what is the most exotic thing that you've ever cooked on a grill?
Oh my gosh. We've done some lion, we've done boar, done some alligator. Trying to think of what else would be exotic. Haven't got too much into the squirrels and stuff like that. I teach a barbecue science at Ohio State, and I've got to harvest some animals, and we haven't harvested anything that small. So I would say the most exotic would be that lion that we had from a place, the boar, and the alligator.
Lion is interesting. Where were you where you got to like eat a farmed lion?
Well, we had it here. So there's a place here that you can get different types of meat. And so that was one of the things that they had that we were able to get, obviously being fabricated, frozen. And here wasn't that exciting. Just cause I have a palate for corn finished product and really good beef. And so it's fun to eat some of that stuff. Although you're kind of like, okay. Like it's fun to have, but if I'm going to have a meal, I'd rather have some really good beef, some really good pork, some brine poultry, or some really good fish. I mean, that's just me, but you know.
Yeah, for sure. So was that an imported meat, or like, do you have lion farms in the States?
I wouldn't know. I don't know if it was imported. I would have to, I'd have to go back. This is probably 2012. So it was a while ago, but I don't know from the place that we got it from. It's hard to say if it was imported or not. You know, like I didn't check the label because you're like, oh man, I'm going to be cooking lion. I don't even know where this is. Just rip open the package, put it on the Barbie and start cooking. You know, like that's just what we were doing. So it's an interesting question. I probably should have paid more attention to it, but I was younger in my career then. So it was more like, we're cooking lion. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. So are you, or have you been a competitive barbecuer? Do you get into the KCBS and all that? Yeah,
definitely into the KCBS. I've competed at world championships. Highest we placed at a time was 9th. Won some grand championships on smaller levels with some teams. Judged world championships. Judged the American Royal 5 or 6 times. So we dabble in a lot of different things. To me, competition barbecue is fun. I'm not the biggest fan of competition barbecue in itself because it is, here at least, a very rich man's sport, right? You got to have a lot of money, a lot of capital, which is okay. But it is the only, and I'll quote one of my mentors, my barbecue Yoda, Harry Sue, and say it's the only competition world that you could take a $2.99 pit and go up against the best in the world and have the same chance of winning as they do. You know, but what I love about competition barbecue is the precision. And for my team to compete, and we competed last year at the World Championships at the American Royal, it was their first time competing. But for me, it was more getting them to understand the precision of competition barbecue, because if we win or we don't win, it's okay, because we're part of the conversation. We're there, we're interacting with people. You know, I've been friends with these guys, Darren and Tuffy and Chris Lilly and Ken Hess and Myron and all these guys. I've been working with them for so long, but my team necessarily hasn't. So it was great to get them part of that conversation. What was cool for them is, and I was competing with the Danish national barbecue team way back in the day, and we didn't have all this luxury. Like I called Harry and was like, Harry, can you come compete with us this year? Absolutely. I'll bring Donna. So Harry Sue's cooking with my team last year at the American Royal. Oh my guys, I never get to do this myself. I had to clean all the chicken myself. I had to fabricate the shoulders. I had to do all the ribs. Like, you guys are so unbelievably lucky to have the barbecue Yoda in the booth doing this. But that's, that's the cool thing about barbecue. And that's, on the competition side, what I love is being a part of the conversation, being part of the community, and also just understanding to the guys the precision, because you get rid of the competition world. When we cook briskets, when I cook a brisket, when our team's doing it for our board or for a dinner or for whatever we're doing, we only cook 1 or 2. So we don't have the luxury of picking the top 2 briskets, 5 briskets out of 10. We only have 1 or 2. So you better put your heart, your soul, and every freaking ounce of barbecue energy you have of love into that thing in order to make it the best. Because if you don't, we're only as good as the last thing that we cooked, right? And so that's the badge of honor that you wear. So when you say like, oh, Kevin, you guys got the best job. You got the best job ever. Like, of course you do. But when you're sitting at the mountain, everybody wants to be at the top of that mountain, right? And that's where the precision comes so much into play, because every single time you have to be paying attention. You do it enough times and you have enough repetition on it. I mean, it becomes second nature. It's like Dustin Green. He's our culinary grill master. He's one of the most talented chefs I've ever been around. He used to be the executive chef at our Weber Grill restaurant in Schaumburg, but that guy can deconstruct any dish that we eat, and he's done it around the world with me. But that when he first started, he's like, I got to learn how to cook brisket. I'm like, okay, we can try. Took him to Camp Brisket down in College Station with Dr. Sable and the rest of the guys, and Aaron's down there, and Wayne and Russell Regals and Brian Bracewell and Ronnie Killen. And you got all the heads of barbecue, the top of the top down there. And he comes back and he's cooking brisket. He probably cooks 45 briskets in a matter of like 5 weeks. Right. Wow. And he's like, you probably got to be getting sick of me texting you what's going on. And it was funny because he was getting to a point where he was getting consistent with it. Right. Because the issue was I cook such good brisket and I take such pride in it because I've learned so much from the guys in Texas that like, that's for them down there. That's what you're known for. Right. And so I always took that upon myself. Like, if I want to be known, I want people to come to Weber and I want them to have the best bite of brisket, the best bite of barbecue you can possibly have, right? I don't ever want to not put the effort in. And so what he learned, and it's a good tip for the people that are doing brisket, if not competition style, but just backyard style, like good barbecue, his briskets were like 195, 200, and they were dry. And he was like, I don't understand what's going on. It's dry. I'm like, because you're not cooking it long enough. It's counterintuitive to cooking a steak. Steak, you want to have more moisture. Brisket, we cook that to 204, 206 at our temperature. Now we let that thing rest for 4 to 6 hours so some of that moisture redistributes back in. But that was where the brisket wasn't tender enough because it wasn't cooked long enough. And for him, that was one of those aha moments. So that's where, like, I love the process of cooking food, brisket, shoulder, whatever it is, because you get in this frame of like when people get hung up, and I've made enough mistakes in my life that you can figure out where they are and help them get to where they need to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's great.
Got a project you'd like to work on with the SHC team? Shoot Ben an email on ben@smokinghotconfessions.com and let's have a conversation.
Alrighty, so this is the second segment of our show now, Kevin, and I want to get into your job as head grill master there at Weber. So the first thing I want to ask you is, how good is your job?
My job might be the single greatest job created in the history of the world. At least that's what I think. And so, I mean, it's one of the single greatest jobs, not because of, yes, I get to be the head grill master. And that's, for some people that's amazing. And trust me, for me, it's absolutely amazing. But my history and my lineage at Weber is the most important piece to my career. When I started out in customer service back in 2001. I got promoted to our parts store. Bill Steven, whose father started the business, George Steven, let me work in the summer times while I got my undergraduate and my master's degree. 2006, I graduated. He let me work in the parts store. Jim Steven came into the parts store one night before he was going home. He goes, Kevin, I want to see you tomorrow in my office at 8:30 in the morning. I want to talk to you about a job. I almost fell over in my chair. Was pulling out of my house. Of course, it's snowing in Chicago. I have a Camaro at the time, so I couldn't get up a hill. My car got stuck. So my wife had to come. I had to get in her car, fire off to work to finally meet him at 8:30 and to have Jim Steven create a position for me doing product training way back in 2006 was a dream. And then I just worked my way up. And what was cool is I was doing company tours at the time. Edna Schlosser, who was our head chef at our R&D lab, whose husband, Eric Schlosser, came out with he designed our first Genesis grill along with Jim. He came out with the Weber Smoky Mountain Cooker. He has so many patents under his name. Both of those two were mentors for me for my whole career. I mean, every morning I would get into work at 7, check emails, check blogs, check food blogs. I'd go over to Edna. She'd have a cup of coffee. We'd talk about what we were going to cook. And for 6 or 7 straight years, we would drive to a store, pick up food, pick up sides. The R&D lab, which we would cook for, they would pay the $3. and we would cook the main proteins. And that's how I learned how to cook, not to test, not necessarily to cook for flavor, but just to cook to test. And so what was so cool in that time was because I was associated with Edna, and there wasn't a lot of people at Weber that were like truly diehard, passionate about food. Like I just was like, I'm doing company tours. I'm interacting with the R&D guys, so I know how we're engineering. And Edna was like, "Hey, Kevin, like this chicken's coming to date. Do you want to take it home and cook it?" And I'm like, I'm getting free meat now. Like this is totally kick ass. I got free meat. And then like a couple months later, because of all the stuff that I was learning and just being a sponge, because you're around some of the smartest people in barbecue when it comes to engineering, right? I mean, we have the level of talent that Weber has when it comes to barbecuing, designing, engineering is just absolutely off the charts. And so they were like, "Hey, Kevin, we have this prototype. You want to take this home?" And I was like, "I get to take a prototype home?" And this is the WSM when we redesigned it with the deeper water pan on the 18, put the thermometer in the lid, all those upgrades. I was part of that. Like my WSM had a thermometer in the lid, the midsection in the bowl. I had to wake up every hour and check those temperatures along with the meat temperatures. But I was like, I'm getting free meat. I got a grill. They're paying for my charcoal. Like, this is the absolute best job in the world. That was like 10 years ago, right? So you're like, well, how can it get any better? And so you build on that. And the marketing people were so good about it that, they were like, "Hey, Kev, you want to try to do, an interview? Do you want to try doing a TV show? Do you want to try to film the commercials?" Like I still have the original lid from a food show that I did, my first food show with Emeril Lagasse and Bobby Flay, and they signed it for me along with Steven Reichland, who's still a good friend. So it was, you got all these memories of the people that you've learned from, right? Because it's your lineage. And that's the best thing that we can do for Weber, its aspect is pass it down. And, I've gotten a lot of compliments and, I get to do a lot of unbelievable things for Weber, things that I would never think I would be able to do. And, I had a conversation with Jim, and I'm still really close with Jim and Bill. And to have them both in different conversation be like, "Kevin, there's no one that's going to be able to bring this brand to life like you did. Our dad, man, you brought this thing to the market. He did all these things, but the way that you bring this to life, the passion, the love you have for this brand, the way that you always stand in the shadow of it. We like to say the shadow of the kettle. You always let the kettle shine, and you always make sure that you're making it shine." What was the best compliments. And so for me, like I could retire tomorrow and be the happiest man alive because I've been able to travel to 16 different countries, teaching barbecue, film, TV shows, do all this amazing things. But to be able to know that Jim Stephen and Bill Stephen gave me my jobs, whose father started the business, to be able to work in a culture that we have such extremely talented people. And to be able to have an impact around the world is just awesome. And so it's so humbling. And so you want to be excited about it, but you're like, man, it's just, what's the next meal we're cooking? What's the next thing we're doing? Because you always want to make sure that you're protecting and fostering it. You know what I mean? And it's such a beautiful thing. And I talked about it earlier about the memories people make. And without people like myself and the people that work at Weber and yourself, Ben, who allow us to talk about it and how important it is to everybody's families and their memories in their backyards. It's all part of that puzzle that we all have a piece to that helps keep barbecue pushing forward.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of expressing that, and it's amazing to hear that they actually created that role for you. That's just amazing. That's like once in a lifetime experience. So yeah, I think we're all even more jealous of you now.
Trust me, there was no other grill masters, no other anybody in Weber besides me, and so it was just one of those things that I was in the right place at the right time, and I used the ad. I was just attracted to the fire and the food. And what I loved about Edna, and she was the head chef at our R&D lab for 35 years, who I would call the original grill master. She had the voice of Jim and our executives. Like if a grill wasn't working, they would ask her. They wouldn't ask the engineers. They wouldn't ask anybody else. Edna, is it working? And she would tell them yes or no and why not. And she had their ear. And so it was just so powerful to see how much she had an impact on the business with the role she had. She wasn't a C-suite executive, but she had the same level of insight, the same level of directness and the input that made a product either go forward or slow itself down. And to see that and not have the title, but have the respect was amazing. And so I've been fortunate. I've lived on the shoulders of giants like Jim Stephen, Bill Stephen, Mike Kempster Sr. I mean, you got Michael McDonald that runs the Australian side of Weber. You got Edna, you got Eric, you got Harry Sue, you got Tuffy, you got Chris Lilly, you've got Myron, you got all these people that I've been able to cook with, I can talk to and interact with. Like, I've truly lived on the shoulders of giants. And my job now, so what I see at the end of my career is help that legacy, help create the next generation of barbecuers, help people where I can, and continue to help build this fantastic brand that has created these amazing memories for myself and everybody around the world.
Yeah, no doubt about that for sure. I think it definitely was the first barbecue that I took to competition was an old Weber kettle that the previous owner of my house had left down the back of the garden shed. And that's how I got into charcoal cooking, was I found this old brown Weber down the back of the garden shed and went, ooh, what's this? Let's play with this. So, yeah. So you've been with Weber for quite some time now. How have you seen Weber change in that 2 decades now?
I mean, it's definitely changed. I think the fun part of seeing the change is how much we're trying to evolve as a brand and create better products for our consumers. I mean, it's so extremely important, and I've seen it from almost 20 years ago till now, and you're like, wow, is this totally fast forwarded? But the great thing is we're trying to do more. Right. I mean, we have such great executives right now at our business. I mean, you have Mike Jacobs, who runs who's our operating guy, who runs all purchasing, all manufacturing. But that guy, not only does he do probably the single greatest job at Weber right now, he is so passionate about barbecue. Our CFO, Bill Horton, who is so passionate about barbecue, he'll FaceTime me on the weekends if he's got a problem or if he's cooking. I need help doing this. What the heck is going on? Like, it is so exciting to be a part of the organization because so many people want such good things for the brand, right? And that's the energy that we need to help things going forward. And you can become stagnant at times, right? Because, you've got the grills and you got the brand and everything else, but it's so good when you can bring in new life and new energy and new people into the brand that really are excited about it, that can see the potential of it and get us to where we need to go to the next level, because we want to be here. Like, my biggest challenge is in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, I want my daughters to be cooking in the backyard on a Weber kettle. And that's the legacy and the lineage that we need, right? And so that's where you see the change, but it's such a positive change because they're constantly looking for how to make it better, right? And not saying that we weren't doing that before, because we were, but the market is so much faster now. You have so many more brands going to market, so many more grills out in the marketplace, that instead of us trying to fast forward and make missteps and trying to do things, we still do that same calculated grilling, design, testing, engineering, and everything else to make sure we're creating those perfect barbecues for people's backyards, because we want them to have that perfect experience now and 15, 20 years from now, right? I like to say that Weber is the perfect marriage of art and science, right? We've perfected that science, so you're allowed to perfect the art form. You can paint that brisket with whatever seasoning you like. You can do whatever you want to it with the wood and all that other great things, but that pit is going to stay the same. This Summit gas grill we got in the back here, this 670, it's going to stay the same temperature every time I cook on it. So that steak that I put on it, I know after 3 or 4 cooks, this is how it's going to cook, and it's going to come out perfect the way I like it every single time. And that's the importance of what we do. And it's an honor and it's a privilege. And that's where, we're spending more time on that, which is so exciting for the brand and so exciting I know what we have coming out the next couple of years, and this is an extremely exciting time right now.
Is there anything that you're able to share about what's coming out?
We have a lot of great things coming out in the next couple of years.
Okay. That's the official company line. Fair enough.
No,
all right.
You got it now. There's some advantages to doing it now, but that is we have a lot of cool things.
Yeah, I don't doubt that at all. So, what would you say has been the hardest part of your job as head grill master?
I think the hardest part of the job is just the weekends away from home, the amount of travel, because you don't, like, people look at it like, oh, Kevin, you've been to Japan, you get to go all over the world. I go into Japan, I land at X amount of time, I'm in a grocery store at 9 a.m., which I only got 2 hours of sleep because of the time change. And then you're cooking till 12 a.m. and then you're up the next day at 9, and then you're doing the classes with whoever till 10 o'clock. And then the next day you're doing PR events. The next day you're doing this. And the next day you're doing this. And then by the time you figure it out, you're already on a plane back home. And you're like, I didn't even get to see the city. Like, man, this is great. Like, I was in Tokyo, but I didn't get to see anything. And so, I mean, the grind can definitely be a challenge. Keeping the energy can be a challenge. But the cool thing is, and this is what I love about Weber, my job, and you said it, like, it is an envious job. Like, trust me, I know everybody wants my job. I know everybody wants to take the job. I know I could do what Kevin could do. I could do this. And I'm friends with Kevin, everything else. But what's so unbelievably cool and humbling to me is I've been to so many different countries. I've taught barbecue in different countries. I've judged competitions in different countries. I've cooked. And as long as I have my Weber and I'm surrounded by people that love Weber, I feel like I'm at home. And that's been the as hard as it is to travel and on planes, off planes, and delays and the grind. And, you're only as good as your last cook, and you don't have any energy left in you, but you have to find it because it's the brand and you want to protect the brand. And it's always about the brand. And I would never want anybody else to do it because I know what it takes to stay up till 4 a.m. one night and then stay up to 5 a.m. the next night and stay up to 6 a.m. the next night and not get any sleep and then sleep the whole way on a plane on a 19-hour flight because you don't have any energy left. But that's what you do for the brand, right? And that's to be able to be around the world doing that with people that share the same passion. You don't feel so alone, right? You go home to a hotel, you wake up, but then you're surrounded by passionate people, right? Like you've got Daniel Pike down there. You've got Laura. You've got, what is it? The HD, I can't remember his name. He tags me a lot from Australia down there. I mean, you have so many passionate people. The Suck Knuckle Smokers guy, like you have so many great people that give you that extra energy, right? And I feed off of that no matter where I'm at because it's like, you want to be tired, but for them, man, they're so excited. You're like, okay, I got to find the energy. And then you could sleep it off and you move on. But it's been the coolest, most rewarding thing. As long as I feel I'm surrounded by this kettle, our products, and our family, man, life is not bad. So it could be bad. The travel's a grind, but I tell you what, like when you're out there doing this stuff and you're surrounded by the Weber family, man, life is good. Life is really good.
Yeah, I'd imagine that you'd have that family everywhere you go too, given what we were saying before about how long Weber's been the brand in barbecue and just how fanatical people are about it all around the world. So what would you say has been the best experience that you've had as head grill master?
I think the best experience I've had, and this speaks to Weber, is traveling to so many different countries, doing so many things from Brazil to Germany to Denmark to Japan, Korea, Singapore, Canada, Mexico, wherever we are. The most important thing is barbecue transcends culture, right? And it brings people together. And Weber does that better than anybody else in the world. And what is so unbelievably cool is when we get back to that art and science comment, here's meat, here's pork, here's poultry, here's fish, here's vegetables, right? Everybody has the same proteins. How they paint those canvases their way and being able to let them explain that, understand why, and learn from them. It's such a powerful thing, especially nowadays with everything that's going on. This barbecue, this brand brings people together. And that's the most important thing. That's been the most rewarding thing that I've seen, that I've been a part of, that I'm humbled by, that I love the most, is we transcend culture. We transcend all that stuff. We bring people together better than anybody else in the world. And to be able to be a part of that and be able to bring cultures and people together and sit around a fire, sit around food, talk about things. I mean, the cool thing about Weber, and this is 7 years, we've been in the backyard. We've listened to some of the most important conversations that families have had about a myriad of different topics, political, everything else. And that's such a respectful and honorable thing that we've done. That's the importance. That's the greatest thing that I've seen, that I've been able to accomplish, and everything else, from filming TV shows and commercials and working with some of the best chefs in the world and pit masters, and you get to do all these cool things. But to see how this brand brings people together around the world and how it transcends that culture and makes everybody feel important in the backyard is the greatest thing I've been able to accomplish and see is what I do.
You're listening to the internationally awarded Smoking Hot Confessions podcast with massive barbecue nerd Ben Arnott.
Alrighty, Kevin, we're in the third segment now. We're in the home straight. You're almost there, don't worry. And I thought that we might have a bit of a chat about something that you said earlier that sort of struck my interest there. You teach meat science at Ohio State University. Tell us a bit more about meat science. Give us a lesson in meat science.
So we've been fortunate that we partnered with the Ohio State University probably 7 years ago. We have a barbecue science class on campus now that we go in and teach 7 weeks, and we go through all the proteins. And so some of the most important things that I've learned in barbecue came from Weber, but I like to say it's my 4 pillars of barbecue. Give me a good pit, give me good meat, give me good seasoning, give me good methodology. If I got those 4 things, everything else is going to be pretty much taken care of. But from my perspective, how I could teach you is if something happened somewhere, I can look in those 4 areas and figure out where it was. Your methodology was either off, the seasoning, you didn't season it earlier enough, or you didn't have enough of this. Your meat quality wasn't good because you went to a different place. You didn't fab it. It was late, whatever it was. And then your pit, right? Because you get your charcoal, and, we going down to Camp Brisket and working with the guys down in Texas, like we've moved from using chunks to logs. We use our charcoal in our WSMs. We bank it on the sides. We put 2 or 3 logs down the center. We let our chimneys on top of those, drop our hot charcoal on, let it sit for 10 minutes, eventually put it together, get that beautiful light smoke coming out of the top of it. But we found that wood being 9 to 15% humidity gives us such a different flavor and profile on our barbecue. It's just absolutely better because some of the wood chunks and other things, they've been kiln dried, so they flash and they fire faster, which you get some of that bad impurity off of. So we take care of that on the meat science side. Like, you got to control that, and where you get your meat from, it is so important. Like, I like getting my meat from the same place because it usually looks the same, fabricates the same. There isn't many things that change much into it. So I know that I'm predisposed right there to come out with some pretty good results. And then I know my methodology and I know my seasoning. And so everything else gets much easier. And so when you look at the grass-fed beef versus the grain-fed and the Wagyus and the A5s, the A9s and everything else, like all that stuff is important because for you as a consumer, for somebody that's cooking, when you're getting something more and more expensive to put on your grill, the opportunity for error becomes even greater because that brisket wasn't $75. Now it's $275, right? And so your mind frame now is like, oh my God, I got to check it more. I got to do all this more. And you get off the track of like, hey man, just put it on the Barbie, put it on the Weber. Like, let it go, stick to the same methodology. It's all going to be okay. But people get so different in mindset. And that's where, like, when you can get set up and you get that methodology taken care of and you get really good meat and you take that grain finished product that has that sweetness and that great beef fat to it, that, you're pretty much onto an equation for success, right? And spending enough time down in Texas, like, I love all types of things that you can grill, but brisket and beef ribs are probably my 2 best cooks because I've spent the most time doing those. I know I know those things in and out. I know where they are, even if they're not, if they're stalling, if they're not. And I take so much extreme pride in them because when you can get a slice of that stuff and it is absolutely perfect, everybody is happy. And that's what you chase. That's what we all chase, right? But having a great grill, like having a WSM, having a Summit charcoal, having a grill that you can do that on a kettle, I mean, your chances get exponentially better that you can be that grill master after that meal, right? And at least I like to explain it. We got 2 reasons why we drink when we barbecue, right? First reason, we drink to forget because we didn't cook very well. So we're just going to have a little bit more so we don't remember what we did the last time. Or we're going to drink to celebrate because we just killed this brisket and absolutely everybody loved it and we murdered it. So that's where, I chase that. We drink to celebrate as opposed to drinking to forget.
Always prefer to drink to celebrate myself. It usually ends better at the end of the evening.
You got that right.
Yeah. Now you mentioned the humidity in the wood. I'm assuming that's the moisture content, 9 to 15%. You said that 9 to 15% is your preferred moisture range, as opposed to what? Like what's a bad moisture range? So
if you got a green wood, if it's been sitting for a while, it's fresh, like that thing is going to be giving you harsh flavor, isn't going to burn correctly. You're going to have a lot of that heavy smoke, that white smoke coming out of it, that pillowy smoke. It's going to create that burping up feeling that you'll have an hour or two later on down the line. Now, granted, we have a lot of grills in our backyards. If you don't like who you're cooking for, at least some of the party, do that to their food, right? So then maybe they won't come back. It's a way to get away from having bad friends. And then you use, the good food for the other people. But we like, by the science of that, spending a lot of time down at Texas A&M with Dr. Nick, when you get I think it's a micrometer, not 100% positive. So don't quote me on it, but if you can test the humidity of the wood, the 9 to 15% is ideal for smoking. Anything less, it's going to flash faster. It's going to, what's the word I'm thinking of? It's going to start itself on fire faster, right? And so the moment that it does that is when you get the bad impurities. And when you get that, that's the harshness, that's the other things. And so if we can keep that wood at that 9 to 15%, we can have the pit set correctly where you're getting that nice white or light blue, clear smoke coming out of it. You still get that beautiful gas getting pulled from the inside of the wood. You're just not getting the harshness that you would get if it's firing too hot or firing too cold.
Yeah, interesting. That's interesting to hear that you've pointed out that sort of that the greener the wood, the more likely you are to get indigestion afterwards. I have not heard that before.
Well, you do it enough times, you're like, what the heck just happened? And so that's where like a lot of at least here, the wood chunks and stuff that we have here, if it's sold like in Indiana versus Illinois versus Wisconsin, it's got to get kiln dried twice because of bugs and other things that could be in the wood. And so you pull a lot of that moisture out. So it flashes faster. So you don't have that same really great aroma that you normally would have if you can find a log or things that are sold in logs, because they're going to have that extra stuff in there. And so for us, it was a game changer. About 4 years ago, coming back from Camp Brisket, we found a place in Chicago that we can get wood from. And so we get white oak or post oak from them. And our beef product has gone through the roof because we get that same aroma, that same flavor. And we use smoke as a seasoning, right? I mean, many of you guys do the same thing. We use smoke as a seasoning. And so I want that beautiful tint, that beautiful flavor, but I don't want the harshness of it. And that's where it can get away from people. But, getting your pit set up is important. How you set that up, giving it 10 or 15 minutes to equalize, not rushing yourself. I mean, a normal brisket for us is a 20 to 22 hour cook. That's usually 14 hours, 12 to 14 on the pit, and another 4 to 6 hours on the rest. And so that's just how we do it. And that's how we come out with them. But that resting time is just as important as the total cook time.
Yeah. So have you found that there's a optimum resting time for different proteins? Like brisket needs to be at least an hour 15 and a steak needs to be no more than 12 minutes, that sort of thing?
Well, so what's cool is, we just came out with Weber Connect in our smoke fire. And so we had to test about 800 different cuts of meat, sizes of steak and everything else. So what we found, anything less than 20 minutes, anything you're going to be grilling, the whole time is about 5 minutes, because we've found, and this is by science, it's not just Kevin's opinion, although I have a lot of those about barbecue. This is factual now, which is important. We're seeing it anywhere between we've got the data, which takes me out of the equation. I'm like, hey, I'm not the bad guy in this whole thing. It's the data. Blame that. But what we found is anywhere between 14 to 17 degrees increases when you let it rest. And so the thicker something is, like it's weird. You would think you got an 1.5 to 2 inch thick steak, you grill that thing over direct heat. I mean, that thing's going to rest 5 minutes. You're going to take it off at 98 degrees for medium rare. It's going to jump up to, it's going to jump almost 17 degrees just sitting there, because all that energy is now in there. So it's really weird how food reacts to holding. Now, briskets, the guys in Texas that we learn from, how we replicate, we like a 4 to 6 hour hold. We wrap in butcher paper. We then finish it with a light of foil. People ask why you use the foil. I love the foil. I wrap around 180 to 185. I love putting the butcher paper on to protect that beefy flavor. I like the foil because I can protect the juice. And the butcher paper allows all that stuff to get to the grill. My grill does not care about that beautiful golden fat. I love that liquefied fat. One, I can put it over the top of the brisket when I serve it, and it's got a beautiful sheen to it that makes that sucker pop like I can't even imagine. The rest of it goes into dishes like our mac and cheese. We've taken it and put it in ice cream that we've made. We've taken it in the vegetables. We've made beef butter that goes on the top of steaks that we've done. And so that brisket fat, although you don't need the foil, and I get why people stay away from, wanting to crunch it down and pat it down because it affects the bark. I like lightly going over the top because I want to save that and I want to use it for other things. And so that's what we do. But the 4 to 6 hour hold, letting those things rest, come down the temperature, letting some of that moisture redistribute it back, like the brisket quality that we've done since letting it rest in an oven at 170 and just keeping it, hot, but open it up, letting some of that heat out. I mean, the brisket quality is off the charts now. And that was probably 4 or 5 years ago that we've done.
Wow, that's really interesting stuff. But I just got to ask, though, how was the brisket fat ice cream?
The brisket fat ice cream was absolutely amazing. And so I got that idea from a place in Arizona because they actually did a bacon gelato. And so what I figured out is they didn't put the bacon into the actual gelato. They put it into the maple syrup that went on top of it. But you use that tangy beef fat, you mix that around, a little bit of bacon, and I can't remember what the name of the ice cream is that Dustin and I kind of came up with, but that was one of the desserts that we did for our board dinner, which it was on a waffle, and it came out fantastic because it just had enough of that tangy, smoky flavor that was amazing. And that's where you get into the fun stuff with stuff like Jason Pruitt. He's one of our barbecue experts here, crazy talented from the South. He was doing a cream corn that we were doing for a board meeting, and I walked by it and I was like, I smelled the corn was off. I was like, that corn's over smoked. Like this isn't going to work. Right. And then so all of a sudden I'm like, Jay, this ain't going to work. And we didn't have any more corn. Like somebody had to go out and get it. So what we did is we actually took the corn, put it in milk and infused the milk with the smoke that was on the corn. And it absolutely came out amazing, which was funny because we had our board in from all over the world. And all of a sudden 3 of the guys come out of that dinner like, what was in that cream corn? I got to get that recipe. It was the greatest. I was like, get out of here. What about the meat? There was the cream corn. And that's where, the fun part is when you work with such talented people like Dustin, like Jason Pruitt, who have such a knack for food and can look at things in a different lens and understand the importance of barbecue, right? Like we've done really important, crazy menus and people really didn't like them that much. But when we do traditional barbecue, but do it upscale a little bit, man, people go bananas. And that's where, when you look at, you guys got like Daniel down there, you've got Laura, who's extremely talented that works for Weber. I mean, knows a ton. That's the cool thing about what we get to do for Weber is bring it to life for people and inspire them. And I'm surrounded by people all over the world that do that for Weber. And I'm lucky and fortunate because as much as they learn from what I do, I learn way more from what they do.
Beautiful, man. That's very well said. Look, that's a good point for us to sort of start to wrap up this episode. So I'd like to throw it over to you now. Give some shout outs, give some thanks to whoever you would like to, who's supported you along the way, and tell everybody where they can follow your adventures on the internet.
Yeah. So we've been, so fortunate, and I call it like, your dojo, your senseis, who you've learned from, right? And I've been fortunate that from Jim and Bill to give me my jobs to work with that and to one of my first things I got to do was with Tuffy Stone, and I'm working with him and Mo. And, Tuffy's like, well, Kevin, what do you think about this? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you should be telling me what's going on, not me telling you, like, this is not right. And so, all right, Kevin, that's what we're going with. And I was like, this is unbelievable. And so, I've got to set world records with Chris Lilly and work with him and work with Mo and work with Tuffy and work with, the best in the industry. Harry Sue, right? One of the greatest ambassadors of barbecue, Sweet Baby Ray, who's a really close friend of mine. Amy and Mike Mills, like I've got to do a lot in the world of barbecue, and the greatest thing that we could do is give back. And when you have people like Daniel, when you have people like the Suck Knuckle Smokers, when you have Laura, who does a crazy good job in Australia. I'm trying to think of the other, what is it? HD. I can't remember what his name is off the top of my head, but he links me a lot in Australia. Like, it's so great to see how our barbecue, and I think as a community and as a country, barbecue is our cuisine, right? I mean, it's something that people chase, but to see how much that's embraced in Australia, to see how much the meat stocks have taken off and how important that is to the barbecue culture there, to be able to know I'm somebody in barbecue because I got the Maca apron and I got the Maca roll. Like it's such a great thing. And so, shout out to all the people that have helped me, that continue to inspire me. I mean, you got Michael and Damien, Michael P. Clyde from Canada, got Damien Chung, who's up in Canada, who's one of the most, I could listen to him talk hours and hours about food because he is so extremely talented. It's just, I've been able to be surrounded by some pretty amazing people. And the coolest thing is being able to learn and comprehend and understand how they do things and being open about it. And I think that's what Weber does for folks, is it opens a lot of doors, because it isn't a very standoffish thing. And, people like yourself to help continue to promote that is extremely important. And, we're fortunate because we live in a world where barbecue is inclusive, that it does bring people together. It is humble. It isn't standoffish. It isn't exclusive. And it's such a great community. And so that's part of what I want to continue to do for Weber and continue to do for people around the world is make it like that. And you can, follow me on Instagram at Kevin_Kolman and on Facebook, and follow what you're doing, Ben, and everything else. And if I could ever help out like I am right now, please let me know. I mean, we're so excited. I was so happy when you reached out and you're like, you really want to do this podcast? I'm like, hell yeah, I want to do this podcast. Like, what? I do. I talk to enough people in Australia. It's going to be nice to be able to talk to somebody face to face on this. So thank you for all that you do for barbecue and the inspiration. I know it's early in the morning there now where we're talking, but that's the thing about barbecue is we don't usually sleep much, but we usually have the most fun. So thank you again for letting us come on.
Well, mate, thank you. And thanks for being on the show. You've certainly shared a lot of wisdom with us, and definitely a lot of enthusiasm. I'm on fire now. I want to go outside and go cook something right now. It's only 9:00 in the morning here now, so I've got the day ahead of me. I think I'm going to go head down to the butcher and see what I can find. But yeah, no, thanks for coming on board the show, and best of luck with everything in the future. Thank you so much again, Ben. Have a great rest of the day. Make sure you tag me with whatever you buy at the butcher today and what you put on your barbecue, because I want to see it. And there you have it, family. That was Kevin Kolman, head grill master from Weber. How enthusiastic is that guy? That is infectious. His love for barbecue and his love for Weber is really clear. And we are so lucky that he was able to spend that time with us today. So we did get into his background and how he got into barbecue, and we got into his job as head grill master there and how that came about. And then we did close out the interview there with a spot on meat science there. And I found that really interesting, the points he was saying about the humidity in the wood. That's the moisture content. That was some really interesting stuff for me in there. So just to close out, I just want to remind you that free mini ebook is still available over on SmokingHotConfessions.com. If you're just getting into barbecue, this is for you. It's the beginner's guide to real barbecue. Head on over to SmokingHotConfessions.com, click around, have a look around. The pop-up is going to pop up. Pop your details in there and we'll pop it straight into your email inbox for you. And I think that's about all the time that we do have for today. So give us a like and a share, give us a rating and a review, all that sort of good stuff. That really helps us out. And until next time, take care of each other and keep on queuing.
Thanks for listening to the Smoking Hot Confessions podcast. Head on over to SmokingHotConfessions.com for recipes, tips, and Ben's own confessions.